Hello and welcome to 110 Yards, the football coaching podcast. I'm Coach Aaron Page, a Canadian coaching American football in Denmark. Today I have a friend of mine, Derek Mann, who's also a Canadian coaching American football in Norway. So welcome, Derek.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yes, starting with your history, you played in the CJFL, which is the junior football league in Canada. What uh, What's that like compared to university? Because I know after that you moved on to Ottawa University and then finally Europe. But let's talk about the CJFL.
First year I moved to Kelowna to play with the Okanagan Sun. I was 18 years old. I ended up playing there for 4 years. The first year, I got very, very minimal playing time. But the team we had that year was a very talented team and an older group. And with the CJFL you can be basically 17 or 18 to 22 years old. When I took part in it, there's a big mix of the younger age guys to the 20, 21, 22-year olds, and the skill level is a large gap at some points. But um, my second, third, and fourth year, I was the starting quarterback for the Okanagan Sun, and I mean, my whole time there, I would compare the skill level to university football in Norway. I can't speak for every program, but how the Okanagan Sun ran, it's very professional. They're looking to bring in the best talent from almost all across Canada, primarily Western Canada, from Manitoba west. And I think the level of play there really got me prepared to go to university. It wasn't a huge difference from the skill level of the players. I mean, when it comes down to football anywhere, the big difference with quality organizations is depth, I feel like. And in the university level at the CIS in Canada, you have more depth compared to a CGFL team. But when it came to the starters and a few backups, I mean, there were so many players on my team that went on to play CIS football and instantly became starters in multiple different universities across Canada. So it is in some ways a feeder program to the CIS, but a lot of guys that I played with didn't look at it like that. They just looked at it as they didn't want to go to the CIS. They wanted to do other things, but still play football at a high level. And the CJFL is a great option for that.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's for me, it was a little bit unknown because on the East Coast, we don't have a division in that league. So I had friends that went over to play there, and that's when I had discovered what that league was all about. And a notable guy who went that route and eventually went on to the CFL was Andrew Harris. So there's possibility to go pro after that. For you going there, was it like were you trying to you weren't going the university route and then you got some good tape and decided you wanted to do one final year at Ottawa University?
Yeah, I mean, funny you bring that up. I'm actually pretty good friends with Andrew. His time with the Vancouver Island Raiders what ran parallel to when I was with the Okanagan Sun. So we played against each other for 4 years, and uh, I originally went to Kelowna to play for the Sun because my older brother was there. And then he eventually left the Sun to play for the VI Raiders with Andrew. And they became really good friends. So I ended up playing against my brother in my final year, or his final year, sorry, in the CJFL, and built a relationship with Andrew, and still to this day talk. And he definitely paved the way for the opportunity for more players to go that route to make it to the CFL. He's been a great ambassador with that. He hasn't forgot where he came from and the path that he took. So it's great to see him influencing others in that regard. Um, I forgot the second part of your question there.
It's all good. I was just saying, what at the end when you went to Ottawa University, was that initially the plan, or were you just going to play some more football and then that would be it, or your goals was to go to the CIS eventually, like you talked about it being a feeder program?
I mean, originally when I was coming out of high school, I got a fairly large amount of interest from CIS programs. And I was reaching out to some smaller American NII, NCAA Division two schools, JUCOs in California. And I always had an interest in playing college and or university football, whether it be in the States or Canada. I really enjoyed my time I had in Kelowna, and I was contacted after my second and third year to transfer. Well, not wouldn't say transfer, but to go to CIS. But I really liked the environment, the coaching staff, my teammates, the organization as a whole. But I knew that I had 1 year of eligibility left over when I was done playing CJFL. And I wanted to continue playing football in some capacity. The A coach that was part of the recruiting process for the University of Ottawa was his name was Corey Goff. He used to coach the at the time the Big Kahuna Rams, another team in the CJFL, and then he took a position at the University of Ottawa as the defensive line coach. And so he was kind of bringing a pipeline of CJFL players out to the University of Ottawa. I went there with, I believe it was 5 or 6 of us that came from the BCFC that year to go play for the University of Ottawa. A lot of those other guys played for him on his team, but he knew me and saw me play and thought it would be a good fit for me to go there. And it was, I was weighing a few options with a few other Canadian universities, and I felt that it would be a good opportunity to go to University of Ottawa. I knew what they did previously with Brad Sinopoli, with him being the Heck Crichton winner, and they had a very good pedigree of players and quarterbacks that had gone through their system previously. So I thought they were a good fit.
Yeah, that's great. And it's always good, to carry on playing. So this is where we're going to bring in Europe to the mix. So after Ottawa, you came over to Norway to start. Am I right?
Yes,
Uh,
after I actually got hurt before our first game at the University of Ottawa. It was a legitimate quarterback. It was an open position at the time when I got there, and that's why they brought me in to fight for that number one quarterback position. And I actually got hurt for the last day of training camp in a drill. So I was in a walking cast almost the whole season until the last 3 games. So I didn't really get to kind of show why I was brought in there on a scholarship because of that injury. So then I knew I still wanted to continue playing football. It was a reason why I went to Ottawa, and I looked around at the possibilities, and I am friends with Roger Kelly, who was then working at Euro Players and now with American Football International. And Roger helped me out with seeing what kind of different avenues there were for me to play abroad, and it was a great reference for me because he had so many connections in Europe already. So I reached out to a few teams, and a few teams reached out to me, and I chose Norway. It was I don't know why, to be honest. I knew the Oslo Vikings, where I ended up coming to, and still currently in that, had a really good pedigree, and I knew Norway was a great place to be. But I had options and offers from Sweden and Switzerland and Germany, and um, I just said, you know what, this could be a good fit, and let's go for it. And So so Roger helped me out there, getting me in connection with the clubs, and yeah, I came here in 2012 as a player, as a professional, and we won the Norwegian national championship. And then in 2013, I went to Germany to play in the GFL 2 for the Rostock Griffins. And then in 2014, I signed again with Oslo to play as a professional quarterback. In 2015, I re-signed with Oslo, and then 2016 I got into coaching here in Oslo as the offensive coordinator, and then 2017 I was the head coach till now.
Oh, hold on, I lost you for a sec. But yeah, so you in 2016 you started coaching.
Yes.
So okay, so yeah, Norway, stint in Germany, and then back to Norway. It seems like you've adapted culturally, as I can. We talked about your sweater that you have on, the Norwegian Christmas sweater. Um,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of similarities between Canada and Norway, and I'm sure that you've noticed a few with Denmark being another Scandinavian country, similarities to Canada. I mean, there are some big differences culturally, but there also is a lot of things that are similar. That it's not so much a culture shock when you move to some of the Scandinavian countries, and it's easy to fit in and adapt and get used to how they operate here, both socially and football wise.
yeah, and you're Canadian, so you were like, you know what? I don't mind the cold. That'll be fine. Um, Now, you and I are some of the only few Canadians over here in this business. And do you think that knowing both the Canadian game previous and then obviously watching NFL and college football and knowing the American game as well, do you think there's some advantage and some carryover of some maybe different tactics or things like that that help you over here, or is it two completely things on its own?
Yeah, I mean, playing Canadian football in the CGFL, it's three down football and it's pretty pass heavy for the most part. So, um, kind of right as spread offenses became a big thing um, in American style football. It's always been a thing in three down football and Canadian football with four and five receivers.
Right.
So it's what I'm used to, throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game, and to instill there is some similarities when it comes to that because I operate with a spread offense and we like to throw the ball around and push the ball vertically down the field. And that's something I've been doing since I was a kid. So that transitions really well. I mean, when you say that there's not many Canadians over here, uh, there definitely isn't compared to American players that are brought over and or coaches. But at the same time, I know that it's less of a gap between expectations, both from organizations and the coaches and players. I mean, the Canadians, I feel like, have a better understanding. They're not coming from stadiums of 50, 60, 70,000 if they're Div 1 players. Canadians kind of are a little bit more, I don't know, humble when it comes to that. They kind of aren't shocked by smaller stadiums, or you get to an away field and they got horrible locker rooms that you got to change in. I mean, Canadians just got this mindset that it's like, okay, it's just, this is what it is. Let's go
Yeah.
play some football, and it's not. I mean, yeah, you're being paid, but it's still much different than the American game. But in Canada, I feel like we're just a little bit, we have a different mindset when it comes to things like that.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And I think one thing, what surprised me too, is the level of dedication the fans have here. So we're not used to big stadiums and all that, but for a small town of 30,000 in Germany, we have 1,500 people at the game. That was also nice to see and unexpected. Uh, and I don't know how the American people would feel about that, but I find at our I don't know how many people would come to the CJFL games, for example, but I played in a senior league in Halifax, and we had our moms and girlfriends there, and that was it, which is equivalent to some of the leagues here in Europe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was blessed that the Okanagan Sun have a large fan base. So when I say large, we'd have maybe 1,500 to 2,500 to a game. But those similarities are like here, like just like you said, the fan base here, it's not huge. I mean, in Norway, American football is still kind of considered an alternative sport, if you'd call it that. It's not mainstream, but it is growing in popularity. Just for instance, when I first came here, someone asked me, "What do you do for a living?" I said, I play American football," and I say, "Oh, we have that here." But
Yeah.
but now it's like, what are you doing? Is that coach? And they're like, oh, do you coach for the Oslo Vikings or the Bullringer Trolls? That people actually know that it's around and they know who the teams are. And I can, in just a little example like that, I could see that it's kind of coming around a little bit more every year. And I mean, we're trying to do our best to push it out there that there's a sport that is different than just soccer and skiing out here in Norway.
Yeah, and I think AFI, American Football International, and Roger Kelly, who you mentioned before, are doing a very good job at exposing and providing a means to watch some of these games, and they're doing a lot of streaming. So the sport is definitely growing as a whole in Europe in general. And like you said, more and more people aren't going, wait, we have a team in the city, and especially when it's a smaller city, you're like, okay, there's not that much going on here, and you still don't know that there's a team. So Oslo, I mean, that's a little bit bigger city, but even so, and now you're doing a lot more with the Vikings than just coaching. What has gone in and the work that you've done to keep the program successful? Do you find I'll add a couple things into this. The youth is highly important, or are you guys more focused on the senior team and putting that product out?
I mean, like you said, I have a few different positions within the organization. I'm also the athletic director, basically slash general manager, and the head coach of some youth teams and our senior men's team. So I have a few different hats I put on, but they all tie together. We we have a large focus here on youth football with all of our programs. No program is more important than the other. We do separate to youth football to our from our senior program, though. I mean, that is the bread and butter of our organization, and that's where a lot of our resources do go towards. But it doesn't mean that it's like we break the bank just for our senior program and the junior program gets the rest type of thing. I mean, we share the responsibilities and make sure everything is in place. So we, we've since I became a coach here, there's always been a huge emphasis on our junior program. I mean, internal retention and internal recruitment within the organization are a big part of our success. We want to keep everyone in the pipeline to eventually contribute to our senior men's team. But with that being said, we're huge promoters, and I have been myself, is to promoting kids to go abroad, whether it be to Canada or the States, to play high school or university, college football. And I mean, since I've been here over my time, we've had about 25 plus kids go to the States to play football there on at a high school or college level. So it's something that we really promote here and encourage. And I mean, it would be completely wrong of me to not do that, as I'm an import who came over doing that exact same thing.
True.
And it's turned out very well for us with kids coming back and contributing on the field and or coaching and giving back that knowledge that they received. You're always going to get those times where people go to the States and then they move back to Oslo and they're just sick of eight 8 hours a day football 6 days a week and want that break. But eventually they will come back and contribute to the club. And um, but like I said, the focus for us is on both our juniors and our seniors, and I mean they're both equally as important for the success of our organization.
Yeah. And that, I mean, pushing players to go abroad and learning those skills to bring back is paramount, I think, for a lot of programs. And it's only good things can happen from that. And when we talk, like I send a lot of tape to Canadian coaches I know in the CIS level. And I wonder though, is it somewhat of a disadvantage for these guys to go to Canada where the game is different and you and I know that? Will there be a learning curve there? And then uh, kind of steer them to not want to pick Canada. Even though I want a lot of these kids, I think with the new international spot in the CFL, if some of these guys have aspirations to go pro, they can occupy that and then be under the noses of CFL scouts. Do you think it's a little bit harder to convince them to go to Canada versus the US?
Yes, I do. Um, More so because I know here in Norway, America is a part of kind of the mainstream media here. It's looked at as kind of in my eyes, as a Canadian looking at it, this almighty place that you can do anything and have fun, and sports are huge, and high school football atmosphere. Here, there's no school sports. No one plays for their high school. It's all club sports, and you don't really have that feel. And that's kind of what kids see when they're watching shows or movies, high school football, Friday Night Lights type of thing. That's where you can do it in the States. It's tough to say, you know, we have that in Canada too, but they don't see it and they don't understand that. They know all about Texas high school football and everything they see, but it is much harder to try and say, you know what, why don't you go to Canada? There is a high level of football being played in Canada too, but it's more so the American experience that comes with it that kind of provokes these guys.
Yeah, that's true. Um, do you have any, you've been in Norway, I'm sure you've learned some of the language now. Do you have any sort of lost in translation moments that have caught you off guard or anything like kind of funny that happened when, whether coaching or just out and about in Oslo? You know,
uh,
I've had a few myself, so I can, we could talk about that a little bit.
yeah, yeah, and no. Luckily here, I've got away with speaking English the whole time I've been here because Norwegians are so fluent in English, and um, now, actually, funny you say that. I started with Norwegian language courses in September, so it's time that I learned the language. But one thing that sticks with me is here in Norway, they have what you call a Norwegian mile, which I didn't know existed when you're measuring distance. And my wife came home from a run one day and she said, "Oh, I ran a mile today." And I said, "Oh, awesome. Yeah, good job." And she was drenched in sweat and red in the face and just dead tired. And then she was like, "Why is he not giving me any appreciation for this?" And then later, a couple of weeks down the road, I figured out that a Norwegian mile is actually 10 kilometers. So that was one of the experiences I had, and then I said to her, "Oh, sorry, I never said anything. Like that's a good run." And but the time for appreciation had already passed.
Yeah.
So that was definitely one that I remember that was lost in translation for me.
Yeah, because like for those that are maybe confused, a mile is 1.6 kilometers. So yeah, if you think about someone red in the face sweating after, just over a kilometer and a half is, yeah, I'd be like, okay, that's a start, So that's
Yeah,
that's pretty funny.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was in Romania last season, and unfortunately due to COVID, nothing ended up happening. But I had a guy, I was, telling the team a story during their stretch, I usually try to, talk about myself while they're in that stretch mode, or they're talking amongst each other. And I was saying how I was playing football and I fell, and I used the expression "I ate shit." And so they were like, "What?" And so I had to explain to them. I was like, "Hey, look. So when you fall, it's something that you say." So I find a lot of when people are not very good in English, they want to use these things that they learn with you. So a few
Yeah.
weeks later at practice, the guy shows up. He's like, "Hey, coach, before practice, over there by the fence, I ate ass." I was like, I was like, "What?" And I'm not even like thinking. I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, what do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, I fell. Like, I was running through and I hit the gate." I was like, "Oh, dude, no, two completely different things." So, you know, um,
That's funny.
but yeah, I mean, the the whole thing about coaching over here, it's so interesting. There's a lot of different people you meet. You bring over guys. Um, so you guys have brought imports over there. What's the the things that you look for? Because it's hard to judge a guy off his Euro player's profile, and they're only going to give you references that um, are going to say good things about them. So whether that's a coach, you can consider that a credible reference, but I always find that either guys come here and they thrive, or they're one and done and they leave. So how do you try to? Is it just luck, or are there some things you look at that are going to say this guy's going to stay, and not be homesick or things like that?
Um, yeah, it kind of ties into what we spoke about earlier about Canadians coming abroad. I personally think I could be very biased when I say it being a Canadian, but I think it is a better fit sometimes if you do bring in a Canadian import, because they don't have those huge expectations of, yeah, I'm getting paid to play, and everybody kind of has to adjust around me, and like I'm one of the 2 or 3 professionals here, and kind of the king shit, that I've experienced before. And I think one thing that we look for is if they have previous coaching experience with youth, because that's something we like to tie into our contracts, is helping out with coaching our youth program. Um, we've never brought in a player that strictly is just a player for the senior team, because we want someone who's a Swiss Army knife when it comes to being able to teach, having good social skills with kids and other adults and people, volunteers. That's one thing that can be difficult to get a gauge on when you're talking to someone. Is, I mean, does this person understand that this is almost a 95% volunteer ran organization? It's not a big time. I mean, our team is a non-profit organization for the most part, with myself as a full-time employee, and we have a few other part-time employees. So you have to know, or I mean, guess sometimes, how is someone going to be in that kind of atmosphere. It's it's not so much a hierarchy, it's more of a democracy of everyone, of the volunteer staff and the assistant coaches working together for a common goal. So that's what's difficult. I feel like you said, you're usually going to get talk to references that are going to give, say, positive things, and it's hard to hear any negative things from people. So it's super important to try and do all the due diligence, sorry, that you possibly can on someone. And I mean, it's always somewhat of a red flag to me if I look at a player who, say, he's had European experience, but he's bounced around on 4 teams in 4 years. That kind of sticks out to me, being like, okay, why hasn't this guy stuck around? If I see someone's been with a club longer than 1 year, then I think to myself, okay, I mean, he's doing something right. that organization wants that person back. And those are kind of the people I look for, that haven't just been bouncing around. Yeah, they might just want to be traveling or whatever it may be, but usually we're looking to try and find a fit that could be a long-term relationship and partnership between someone that builds continuity within the player group and within the coaching staff with the youth programs.
Yeah, and I think I mean that's a great way to look at it because that's ideally what you want is that continuity, especially whether players are coaching. You're in different systems or you're running different systems, and you can't expect a team, if they have a different coach every year, for example, to do well in the long run if they're learning something brand new every season. And yeah, so I think you're right. It is tough, and you do have to do your due diligence. But I am going to agree with you as a biased Canadian as well that I think Canadians may fare better, like you said, without you being used to all the trainers and crazy facilities and all that stuff. So um, yeah, I mean um, that's all I pretty much have today. If there's any one last thing you want to talk about your program or anything like that. Um,
Um, no, I mean, I just appreciate that you thinking of another fellow Canadian out here abroad, making a living coaching and/or playing football here. It's uh, it's always flattering to be able to get approached to do things like this, whether it be podcasts or interviews in any kind of capacity to hopefully promote a little bit of quality football is being played in Canada, and there are a lot of athletes that can, if they want to, continue their playing career outside of North America. Um, I wish I could bring in a lot more, but how it is with finding housing and the financials of things, it makes things very difficult. When I started here, we were allowed to have 3 North American professionals on a team, and then the last couple of years it was moved down to 1. And in 2020, it was actually supposed to be back to 2. But uh, I've talked about the amount of imports uh, in each league, how it varies, and what are the pros and cons of teams saying the GFL having 6 imports compared to you having 1 or none type of thing. And it's just the nature of the beast, kind of. Some big city clubs have an advantage because they are a big city and it's appealing for players to live in. But then again, I mean, some of the smaller towns, they have their advantage too. It's easier to get indoor facilities.
oh, I think we might have lost you there, but well, that was Derek Mann, and I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. He's a wonderful coach in Oslo, and look forward to. Hey, Derek.
Hey, I don't
Yeah,
know when
sorry.
I lost you.
Yeah, yeah, we got lost there, but you were saying that about teams having 6 imports versus 1 import and the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you heard, but I was talking about the differences between a big city team compared to a
Yeah,
smaller city
yeah,
team.
yeah, and they have advantages of indoor training.
Yeah, indoor training, easier times to get facilities, cheaper apartments that they could rent
Yeah,
for bringing in more players. And I mean, there's pros and cons everywhere. Um, I don't know how it is with you currently, but Oslo is a fairly big city with not a lot of sporting facilities, especially when it comes to the winter with
yeah,
the heated fields and all that. So it can be very difficult logistically to try and find proper facilities and resources within the limited budget that we have to operate with to be able to run programs year round. And I think that's one of the big differences from myself when I was playing football as a kid to here. We offer a program that runs year round for all of our age groups. So, I mean, when I was younger, it'd be football season from middle of August to October. Then you're right into hockey season, and you're into basketball season, and so it's a little bit different when it comes to the sporting atmosphere. Here, people kind of pick one sport and just go with it. I always promote kids to be multi-sport athletes. I think it's can only be beneficial to learn. You don't always want to see my face every Tuesday and Thursday of the year. You want to see other coaches and learn different things and other philosophies and different focal points of how just to be a overall well-rounded athlete. So, I mean, it's different in that capacity here when it comes to sports.
That's true. And like I grew up playing baseball before I played football, so I had the ability to, track a ball when I was playing receiver, which sometimes guys have a hard
Mm.
time with. I think more over here, you'd look at handball players or basketball players as, you know, having the skills that carry over to American football. So you're right. Being multi-sport, especially at the youth level, is important, and I don't think people should hold their kids back or try to just tuck them away, which I find is more and more in Canada nowadays than even when I was a kid or maybe when you were a kid. We're close in age, and I think more people are keeping their kid in like hockey, for example, in Canada, and not letting they're doing all these camps and summertime camps and all this stuff. So I think it's to the disadvantage sometimes for other sports.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, when I was younger and we got into, I don't know if they still call it, but rep hockey when you got to a certain age when you had to try out for teams. And I mean, one of the things that I always heard was if you want to make the top team, you got to stop playing American football and basketball and just this has got to be your main commitment. And I always say, no, that's not really what I want to do. I'll
Yeah.
play on the second best team then, and I'll play on the B team and continue to play football. I don't know how many times my mom was driving me from a hockey game and I'm getting changed out of my gear and into my football equipment in the car on the way to the football field and playing another game the same day. But I wouldn't have it any other way. And I wish it was more like that for the kids here because it's important. I mean, it helps their social life. It helps to help you get more well-rounded as an athlete. And I thought it was really interesting reading an article about when Urban Meyer was coaching at Ohio State about his philosophies of what kind of athletes he recruits. And out of the 60 guys per se he had on his active roster, 57 of them were multi-sport athletes. And he said that's all he looked for when he was recruiting. Like say there was 60 guys on scholarship, I should say. 57 of those guys were multi-sport athletes, and that's what he does. That's
Yeah.
who he recruits, and that always stuck with me because I felt like I agreed with that when I read it. I said that's kind of how I grew up, and that's all my friends did the exact same thing, and they all went on to play hockey at a high level, and I chose football, but it's still a direct translation from playing multi sports.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on, and again, it was great to have another Canadian on here, and I wish you a Merry Christmas and all the best in the season this year with the Vikings.
Yes, I appreciate it. Merry Christmas to you too. And like I said, we got to set something up. Canadian versus Danish or Norwegian versus Danish battle. Get our teams playing each other.
Yeah.
And but wish you the best of luck also, and appreciate you having me on. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you.